We're in the information age, but facts are in short supply. Reject the noise, ask bold questions, and seek the truth with FBI whistleblower and common sense extremist Steve Friend. This is the American Radicals Podcast.
It is the American Radicals Podcast. It's Monday, May 18th, 2026. And today we're going to have a conversation about government conducting secret searches. The FBI Director of Media and Password Strength, Kash Patel, he's going snorkeling in Hawaii. The President of the United States has made some pretty shady stock trades. The Department of Justice targeting Cuban dictators now and letting an Indian billionaire off the hook. And finally, Democrats just hate the police. So let's get after it. You know, I'm calling today's episode Already Fired for a couple of different reasons. It has a nice double entendre there because I think that the FBI Director, Media and Password Strength, Kash Patel, should already be fired, which we'll get to in a few minutes. But I have an overriding principle. Already fired. One of the most profound thought processes that was ever proffered to me by a fellow law enforcement person was the following. We were talking about use of force, having to actually use deadly force. And this officer said, you know, that round that is in the chamber is already fired. Meaning, I've already made the decision. I've already made the decision that if the conditions arise, that the person is engaging in an action that is going to present an imminent threat of danger or serious bodily injury to me or to another person, that is that person's fault for engaging in that activity. And I am just delivering the round. There's not a decision-making process. I have decided ahead of time that I am just the delivery boy. Those actions on behalf of the recipient of the round, that was their decision. Now, what am I talking about today? I kind of made a decision a long time ago. I'm always going to say what I think is true. I might not say everything, but everything that I say, I think is true. I'm not in the habit of lying at all. In fact, I probably overshare and probably I go into areas that are going to be to my detriment publicly because I say things that result in me sitting here in front of you on the American Radicals Podcast with a non-restrictive waistband. And I love it, but at the same time, I kind of gave up a career on that because I said, I have a line in the sand. And if I have to cross that line, that is my obligation. That's what I have to do. So today, what I'm going to do is hurt some feelings. Not your mama's show. It's your daddy's show. I'm not going to be merciful. I'm not going to be magnanimous. I'm going to be commodious today.
Am I not merciful? Am I not merciful?
If I see things that I think are wrong, I'm going to say them. And I don't care if there's an R or a D or it's your organization or your buddy's organization. I'm going to call it out. That's what I'm always going to do. That's my pledge on the American Radicals Podcast. I'm going to do that. Those rounds have already been fired. I'm just the delivery boy. So I want to actually start off with a little more of an intellectual conversation rather than just news of the day. And I saw this and I thought it was important just to educate the AmRad Pod audience because I have a little bit of insight into this. This is a story from the Washington Post, because democracy dies in darkness. It's an opinion piece, and it's advocating on behalf of a new bill that's been proposed that I think is probably actually a good thing, an objectively good thing coming out of our Article 1 branch, the Congress. The headline of this piece is, these secret government investigations fly in the face of the Constitution. And it's all about search warrants for your digital stuff that you have no idea are actually happening. From the piece, today, when the government wants to sift through your private papers, it doesn't need to go through any door, let alone knock. Instead of presenting you with a warrant, it sends one to your email or cloud provider, compelling that provider to search for the evidence the government is interested in. The government also routinely uses non-disclosure orders, NDO, to gag the provider from telling you that your data has been examined and surrendered. Now, some numbers here that are really disturbing. In the first half of 2025, I guess there were some FOIA requests that went on with this. They just asked how many of these search warrant orders went out to Meta. And it looks like the government gagged Meta over 3/4 of the time on its over 81,000 search warrant requests. They sent out 340 of them per day. It's a lot of law breaking going on there. The federal government was sending out these search warrants to Meta, Facebook, and saying, hey, we want to get access to this account because we have reasonable belief, we have probable cause that this individual is engaging in an unlawful activity, and we want that evidence. You have to give it over to us. Now, what's the difference between that and the way you typically would understand the Fourth Amendment? It's a protection against unlawful searches and seizures. You're supposed to be safe and secure in your personal effects and your papers from the government. The government can't just come to your door, boot it down, and say, give us the evidence that we want. They have to make the case ahead of time. They have to get to probable cause, go to a judge. A judge says, okay, I agree, probable cause. You can now go into that house or that business and search for the physical evidence. But that's really costly. That takes a lot of time. I mean, just the time alone to type up a search warrant. It's a little bit more streamlined and efficient today because you have go-bys, these templates, and the FBI, they call them ponies. And you're going to use specific language that you always use and just kind of insert different names and dates, particularly if you're working one certain crime. I mean, if you're working child pornography, child sexual abuse material, they basically are the same case over and over and over again. The bad guy is a different name. He is doing it from a different location on a different date, but effectively, we have probable cause that he has some naughty images on his device. So I want to get that. So it's streamlined, but it still is cumbersome. You have to go to the bad guy's house. You have to knock on the door. You might have to force entry. It's going to take, in the case of the federal government, a ton of people. Went to an FBI search warrant. Never did I see there less than 20 people. They just bring in everybody. It could be the SWAT team, it could be the agents that are out there conducting the searches to make sure it's all safe, and maybe putting handcuffs on people, setting up and establishing a perimeter. Then the evidence response team goes in. You got a photographer, a person who's scribing everything down. It is a lot of people. That's a full day. So it's kind of a big lift. And you contrast that with the digital search warrant. Well, that's just an email. In fact, if you go to Meta, to Facebook, they have an online portal. You just give them your government email account. They verify that you're not posing as anybody who's not actually a law enforcement person. And then they give you access to the portal. You log in, type in your email and your password, and then you just upload your request. And then within a certain amount of time, normally like 14 days, you get an emailed zip file back to you with everything that you wanted. Now, is that really a good thing? Well, it's efficient if you're going after lawbreakers. It's really an awesome tool to have if you're vetted as having fidelity, bravery, and integrity, but it's ripe for abuse. And then just think about it as an intellectual exercise. You're asking a Facebook, a Twitter, a Google to give you the personal effects of someone else. Now, that other person doesn't know what's going on because you have a non-disclosure order, which means that Google or Facebook or Twitter, they can't tell the account holder that they're doing it. That means that they can't object to it. They can't go to the judge and say, hey, I'm doing work with some clients and that's privileged information because I'm an attorney and they can't have it. Oh, there's some medical records. There's some protections there. There's some correspondence between me and a pastor and my wife. All of those sorts of objections you might be able to raise if you knew the government was doing it are out the door. And do you think Meta or Google or Twitter is really going to object to the government, which it has a close symbiotic relationship with? Plus, they get paid money to do it. The government pays them for all this stuff. So it's very lucrative, and they have these awesome partnerships. So you really don't have the due process that you're supposed to have. And then metaphorically, we're going to a third party and we're saying, hey, give us the stuff that we want on behalf of someone who's not involved in this process at all, who's allegedly living in the land of the free where they have a Fourth Amendment right against illegal search and seizure. What's the difference between going to a hotel clerk or a landlord at an apartment complex or a mortgage broker at the bank where the hotel clerk gave you the key to your room, but you don't own that room? The landlord who works over at the apartment complex. You don't own that apartment. Hey, do you have a mortgage on your house? Do you really own your house, or does the bank kind of own it? Let's just go to one of those people and say, hey, why don't you just go search while Bob and Claire are away at work? I mean, they have no expectation. You really own the property. We're actually concerned that if they become aware that we're searching, then they'll destroy the evidence. So, landlord, mortgage broker, hotel clerk, go in there and search for what we need and give it to us, and never tell them. Hush, hush. That's a problem. So the resolution that gets actually proposed here, which is currently in existence, it's been proposed a couple of different times through the different Congresses, through both houses, is this thing called the NDO Fairness Act. So court approval of the non-disclosure orders. Why would you need a non-disclosure order to begin with? Well, they're going to destroy the evidence. Well, right now it's kind of irrelevant because you could go to a Facebook or a Twitter and say, this is a preservation request from the government. You cannot delete these things and not allow them to be deleted. Preserve them until I'm able to go get the search warrant. And they'll go do it. Not a big deal. So it's not really an actual fair argument for the government to make that, well, we're worried that somebody's going to delete their emails. No. You just go to the Google and say, preserve it. But in this case, with this NDO fairness, the court is actually the source that's going to approve a non-disclosure order. It's not just at the discretion of the FBI saying, yeah, you can't tell them. And also, the non-disclosure orders will expire. It'll expire after 90 days, unless it's a child porn case. I think they give them up to like a year. But look, we're having this intellectual conversation. How about real world applications? This is exactly what happened to my buddies, former co-host on the American Radical podcast, Garrett O'Boyle, friend of mine, Kyle Seraphin. I'm on his show every single Friday for Friendly Friday. Both of those gentlemen were under some sort of criminal investigation, and their information from their Twitter accounts or from their Apple accounts or for their Gmails, all of these things were sought by the government, and those entities could not tell Garrett or Kyle what was going on. They were not able to mount any sort of defense to go to the court and say, hey, that's completely inappropriate. It was all done secretly. So you can see how it could become ripe for abuse. So in the face of that, having these tools, and I've alluded to, you want to have people who are there, who are fidelity, bravery, integrity, just the best of the best. And where that starts is really at the helm. So I want to pivot over some of the news stories of the day, because we're hoping that the leadership that we have now that we're so back and we're so based because 2024 went to the Republicans, baby. Yes, the GOP came in and they're ending all weaponized government every single day, and they're appointing the best people. Let's go over to the FBI, where we had another expose, this one courtesy of the New York Times, about FBI Director, medium password strength, Kash Patel, capital K, lowercase a, $H, number 9. Headline, snorkeling at Pearl Harbor. Kash Patel's travels add to focus on ethical issues. So this is all about this snorkeling trip that he did last summer, when he went to Pearl Harbor and insisted on Navy SEALs escorting him and 9 other people to go on a snorkeling adventure around the sunken USS Arizona. That's kind of disturbing for a couple different reasons. One, why is it got to be the Navy SEALs? Just curious. Are you that much of a holster sniffer? FBI director, medium password strength. It can't just be like regular Navy divers. You got to make sure you get the tier 1 guys. You can high fives and pretend that you're an operator. And then morally, the USS Arizona is a graveyard that is actually spitting on the ground there because your tongue's touching the water. And you're not supposed to be there. It's a very restricted area. I guess the National Park Service can go down there and conduct some sort of study just to see what the status is. I believe the military takes the remains of veterans who have died, who were on the USS Arizona and survived the bombing at Pearl Harbor. They take the remains back down there to be with their buddies once they have died. So really in poor taste. And look, is this the biggest deal in the world? No. But it's compounding on other sort of failures that we're seeing, and people's patience is wearing thin, mine included. Mine actually, because I was under the misconception that this guy, FBI director, medium password strength, was actually a man of his word, actually did have a modicum of integrity. He completely pulled the wool over my eyes, has no integrity at all. And for that, I am eternally apologetic to the American Radicals podcast, internally apologetic to the American people. But I'm saying that this is compounding because we saw the stuff that went on in Italy, where Kash Patel was using his position to go into the locker room with a bunch of half-naked men, hashtag me too, and pretend that he won a gold medal. And we've seen the abuses and the traveling around. And in here in this article again from the New York Times, they go into how he's assigned FBI SWAT team guys to protect the girl who's his friend, Alexis Wilkins, because she has to have full-time team on her and vehicles, and that's costing the American taxpayers about $1 million a year. And then hidden in this piece, a little bit down, you find out that it's not just the snorkeling. There's some other revelations that came out. So last year, Kash Patel, Alexis Wilkins, flew in the FBI jet, which she's not allowed to be on, from DC to Philadelphia to go see a country music show. George Strait, Chris Stapleton, and they were in a suite that cost anywhere between $35,000 and $50,000. Now, look, the FBI director, he's suing the Atlantic for $250 million. I mean, maybe he's really flush because he's the FBI director. He just makes so much money. He doesn't. But, he had some prior wealth going in through his charitable efforts, laundering scheme, and has accrued that money. Maybe he shelled out 50 grand for a country music concert. Maybe it was gifted to him. Did he report that on his income tax? I don't know. Was that purchased with government funds? Did he just do the Olympics thing and show up and land himself in a suite because he flashed the badge and the credentials? We don't know. That needs to be vetted out. And also, there were some other revelations again that came out because that's hardly the only thing in this story. So during the trip where Kash Patel was doing the snorkeling, it was in this tour of the South Pacific. He was in Hawaii, and then he was also in Australia and New Zealand. That was the time where he gave the 3D printed gun to the officials, I think in, what was it, Australia or New Zealand? One of the gun grabbing countries, and kind of created an international incident because you're not allowed to have guns. But there was another thing there, which we found out, is that he's a super fit guy, man. He wants to show you that he's an operator. He's ready to be a Navy SEAL like the guys he made take him on the snorkeling tour. So he went for a run and a swim with the police commissioner in New Zealand, and they were swimming during a tsunami warning. So putting themselves, I'm sure their protective details, at physical risk because they're special people. Now, where's the overall takeaway on this that I want to make? Well, these things are going to continue compounding. They're going to continue coming out because Kash Patel's a marked man. I mean, if you want to use a mafia metaphor, the Council of the Five Dons in New York City, they've sanctioned this hit, I believe. I believe that's just a matter of time. He's already fired. But I think we're going to see it get worse before he gets gone because I'm aware of the calendar. We alluded to the $1 million to protect Alexis Wilkins. And they mentioned their overtime. Federal workers are capped on their amount of overtime. You can't earn beyond a certain amount. You can't earn beyond a certain bottom line revenue total payout for the year. Once you're maxed out, you're working for free. Now, that rarely affects anybody. But one cast of characters who it does affect pretty regularly are protective detail guys. Guys who are out there, from my experience in the FBI, protecting the Attorney General and protecting the FBI Director. Think of them as the Secret Service protective detail types for those two principles, the Attorney General and the FBI Director. And because it's a round-the-clock thing and they don't have enough people, they're constantly doing overtime. And they're just slaves and whores for the overtime. The guys that go do it, they are killing it, man. They're making so much money. But when you have a guy like Kash Patel who is traveling all the time and going out in the town and going to country music concerts, if he's not just snorkeling in the ocean, those guys are going to meet their max at a certain time before the end of the year. which means they'll be working for free, which means that they're going to be more inclined to come forward with the concerns. Now, theoretically, again, those guys in the protective detail, they're special agents, they're supposed to have integrity. If they see wrongdoing, a violation of rule, policy, procedure, unnecessary risks to the public safety, violation of the Constitution, they should come forward no matter what. But who can blame them? They look and see what happens to the whistleblowers, right? They have their lives ruined. I'm just going to keep on collecting that sweet, sweet overtime. Hey, what the heck? You mean I have to work all weekend protecting this dim bulb's girlfriend? The girl who's his friend? I have to leave my family to go and make sure that he doesn't get swept away in a tsunami for free? Oh, heck no. So as this year progresses and those guys meet the upper threshold of the amount of money that they're allowed to earn from the federal government, I fully expect to see more of this come out, which will mean more negative attention for the FBI director, medium password strength. And I think he'll be gone in pretty short order once we start seeing those stack on top of each other. Okay. Let's now talk about some other things that are not FBI related, but probably should be because it involves some public corruption. And again, I'll give you a reminder, guys. I don't care if it offends your sensibilities. Not your mama's show. It's your daddy's show, and I'm gonna be pretty ruthless and merciless.
Am I not merciful?
Am I not merciful?
So July 4th coming up. Happy 250th birthday, America. Also, the Trump accounts are going online. Who's excited to get some free money from the government for your baby who was born in 2025, 26, 27, or 28, as the Trump accounts are pledging to do $1,000 college savings accounts, money that is stolen, taxed from your fellow citizens in order to put into a bank account for your baby and then invested in the stock market so that the Magnificent Seven technological firms can go ahead and hit their all-time highs at the stock market. So we've got some socialism, we got some fascism, but the breakdown of the way that these accounts are supposed to go, starting in July 4th, families, other eligible contributors able to deposit up to $5,000. That's on top of the $1,000 that the government's going to steal, tax from the citizens to kick into them. And it's supposed to be an added benefit because if maybe you work for a certain company and they say, hey, look, we're going to put money into your 401k and we'll kick some money into a Trump account. Aren't you grateful? Don't you want to come work for us? It could be a benefit here. But ultimately, I oppose any sort of mandate from the government that redistributes wealth and does it in a way that winds up benefiting the people who are well connected. And I want to use that as a jump off point and also as a callback because I think last week I touched on this either on Wednesday or Thursday, because this is ripe for corruption, very much like the non-disclosure orders that are available at the government's fingertips in order to spy on people without their knowledge. This has the ability to do what communists do, or I guess what all government gangsters wind up doing, and that is rewarding their friends, punishing their enemies, lining their pockets. So I alluded to it last week, but just as a refresher, this is the president at a Mother's Day event telling the country, make sure you go buy a Dell.
And I want to thank the Dell family. It's a great family. He is amazing. She is amazing. They've done such a job on that. They put up a lot of money too. Put up $6.25 billion. That's somebody. And he started making computers on his bed in college and selling them because they were better than other computers. And I said, how did you do that? He said, well, I did it and I just never stopped. It just kept going. So go out and buy a Dell.
Buy a Dell, the president said, and it was in response to the Dell family donating charitably, I'm sure, out of the goodness of their hearts, over $6 billion to the Trump funds, not to the young ones, not to the kids that are eligible for it, 2025 through 2028 births, but actually some older kids. It was going to be, I think, $250 for 25 million older children. And that's charity. It's good to give, except then the president goes out and says, buy a Dell, and then the company hits all-time highs. Now, that was good for the Dells. Was it also good for the president? So this is from Quiver Quant headline. Trump discloses large stock purchases in Nvidia, Robinhood, Palantir, and other tech firms. This relates to some stock trades by the president. $5 million of stock in the Dell company, February 10th. It has risen 96% since then. I'm sure saying to the American people, go buy a Dell helped his portfolio quite a bit. Trump also bought stock in Intel in March and has risen 150%, and the government owns 10% of Intel. Intel, SanDisk, Dell, and other semiconductors or AI infrastructure names were made ahead of the renewed US China trade negotiations. So he made those trades and then went to China and benefited Intel, SanDisk, and Dell. NVIDIA purchases made before he brought the CEO of NVIDIA with him to China, saying that this is a good and faithful servant. So go forward and trust NVIDIA. Robinhood, they are serving as a brokerage and initial trustee for the Trump accounts. So if the Trump accounts come online on July 4th, Robinhood will be the beneficiary of that, and the president knows it. And then last, we have Palantir, Boeing, GE Aerospace, the military industrial complex group of companies that are directly reliant on the American government, continuing to engage in a kinetic operation, definitely not a war. How dare you call me a stewardess? I'm a flight progress coordinator in Iran. And that is a good place that we can pivot now over to this Iran stuff. But before we do, guys, I do want to make sure that I give you, this is the one time per show reminder. If you haven't already and you're watching us here on YouTube, Rumble at AmRadPod every weekday, noontime. Make sure you have given us already a thumbs up, follow, subscribe to that. And if you wouldn't mind, head on over to Spotify as well and subscribe to the channel there. Give us a play to make sure that we're boosting it there. Again, at AmRadPod across all different platforms. All right. Now let's stay on the Iran stuff. Now, I saw this was a recent announcement that the Department of Justice, the FBI, has now identified an evildoer who they are hell-bent on going after, a defector, somebody who's not recent, but is now being brought up for reasons that we'll get into. Here is the announcement from ABC, Good Morning America, about this defector being on the radar of the Department of Justice.
Monica Witt is now a fugitive, a defector, says the FBI, believed to be living in Iran right now, where she can continue to reveal secrets. This is a woman who spent more than a decade doing counterintelligence for the Air Force. We learned overnight that she worked as an airborne crypto linguist, meaning she was likely flying over the region, sucking up conversations and helping to analyze that data using the Farsi language skills the Air Force taught her. The indictment said her motivation for spying is ideological, saying she said she wanted to use the training she got for, quote, good, not evil, and threatening to go public with these secret programs and, quote, do like Edward Snowden, who, of course, leaked massive amounts of classified intelligence.
All right. So I don't know a lot of the specifics of her case. All I really have to go on is some of the press releases and the reportings about the press releases that are coming from FBI and DOJ. And I can even throw up the FBI's here, where the headline, FBI Washington field office announces $200,000 reward for information leading to the apprehension of former U.S. counterintelligence agent charged with espionage for Iran. Now, I talked to George Hill a little bit about this. He actually thinks that this woman, her name is Witt, she might be a double agent, according to George Hill. I'll have to kind of ping him on that a little bit more before I render in my opinion on this one. But here's what the press release says. Witt, she's a former active duty U.S. Air Force intelligence specialist, special agent for the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. That's her law enforcement component. Searched in the military, she served in the military from 97 to 2008. Then she did some contracting work. Her military service and contracting employment provided her access to secret and top secret information related to foreign intelligence, counterintelligence, including the names of U.S. intelligence community undercover personnel. She defected to Iran in 2013. So now we're up over a decade, 13 years ago. And while Witt has been indicted for her alleged crimes, here we go, guys, she remains at large. The FBI continues to actively work to locate Witt and bring her to justice. Now, I haven't formally weighed in, and I haven't had my deep conversation with George Hill about it, and I am open to being convinced otherwise that she could be some sort of a double agent. But on its face, you're telling me that the Department of Justice and the FBI 10 plus years have been investigating this woman? 13 years they've been looking at her, and just now, just exactly now, that we're involved in not a war, just a kinetic operation. Don't you dare call me a stewardess. I'm a flight progress coordinator, and we need to have some enemies. We need to have people that the DOJ and the FBI can get involved in on this kinetic operation. Definitely not a war. You mean to say that they just timed it for now? That they want to elevate this story? They indicted her now? Oh, no, they didn't indict her now. They just raised the reward to $200,000. $200,000, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of overtime for the protective detail for the FBI director, medium password strength, or maybe some fuel that he can pump into the jet and fly to his next country music concert with a girl who's his friend. Because I think that they know exactly where Miss Witt is right now. And just like they always do for all the most wanted, they announce it. The person's on the most wanted list. We're upping the total reward. And then they'll come down and arrest her sometime soon so that they can do high fives and helmet stickers and wave pom poms about just how awesome they are. I think that the knowledge on this is already fired. It's already downrange. That's my speculation. Again, I'm open to being convinced otherwise. But what I'm not open to being convinced about is how everything now is being filtered through the lens of the kinetic operation, definitely not a war, in Iran. I'm not going to weigh in on the primary in Kentucky that everybody cares a lot about. I've met Thomas Massie once. He was very nice and kind to me. It was not a very long exchange. But if I lived in Kentucky's 4th district, I'd probably vote for him. But I would definitely vote for Thomas Massie. But he's facing this tough primary challenge. So tough that the Trump administration and the Republican Party have dumped millions of dollars into a safe seat so that they could get somebody else in that seat to vote in line with the Trump administration like 1% more of the time. What is the 1% more of the time? Well, it deals with Epstein stuff and Iran stuff, which is kind of disturbing when you see how the current Secretary of War, I guess, doesn't know what a Hatch Act violation is now campaigning against a sitting congressman in his primary. It seems like everything that we're dealing with right now through the Trump administration is through the lens of, do you support the kinetic operation in Iran or not? And that is not really in the interest, from my humble opinion, of what the American people voted for. I didn't see dropping warheads on foreheads in Tehran when the platform was released. We voted for let's reduce inflation, eliminate inflation, end inflation, I think is what the promise was, and do mass deportations. End weaponization and respect the Constitution. Now, we're still going to push forward some non-disclosure orders so that we can spy on the American people. We're going to continue just engaging in forever wars, and we'll do it in a way that we can also invest in the stock market and make sure that we line our own pockets. Is that something that you really signed up for? Well, we've already engaged in kinetic operation in Iran. Before that, it was Venezuela, where we deposed a guy there just for reasons, I guess. Who's ready to go to war on Cuba? Because that seems to be next on the agenda list. This is reporting from Al Jazeera. Headline: U.S. seeks indictment of former Cuban leader Raul Castro. The guy is older than Chuck Grassley, I think. So potential charges for the 94-year-old brother of Fidel Castro relate to a 1996 incident in which Cuba shot down planes flown by anti-Castro humanitarian group Brothers to the Rescue. So a 30-year-old ordered to shoot down planes. I don't know why Raul Castro would be on the hook for that. I don't think he was in charge then, but I'm really not well read into the history of the despotism of our island neighbor to the south. The move comes amid a U.S. blockade that has halted virtually all fuel supplies to the island, and with the Trump administration pushing for regime change. Who's ready for another war? And we're pushing for somebody to get indicted who's 94 years old and never going to see American justice. We're pledging to go and get a defector who might be a double agent, but might more likely, in my opinion, just be the next person we're going to try to do high fives for. Where are we actually going to see justice? Where are we going to see the guilty held accountable? We've already punted away Epstein. How about some fraud? How about some corruption? We're going to hold the elitists to account. Are we getting that? No, we're not, because the Washington Post reports the following headline: DOJ expected to drop fraud charges against Indian billionaire Gautam Adani. Now, the laydown of this entire investigation: DOJ preparing to seek dismissal within days of a pending bribery and fraud case against Gautam Adani. The criminal case was brought forward during the Biden administration, just before the end of the Biden Autopen administration. They charged this guy. They said, hey, you're an Indian in India, and you're saying you don't engage in bribery, but we have proof that you're actually bribing Indian officials for $250 million. Because you want to get this contract that's worth billions. So cost of doing business in India. But at the same time, this is a publicly traded company. Americans are investing in this company, and you're saying you don't do bribery, and you're lying to them. So we're going to pursue some sort of criminal investigation, perhaps an indictment. Now, where does it stand now? Well, this guy, Adani, he hired a Trump lawyer. So the lawyer is Jeffra. Jeffra, he represents a couple of different of the Donald Trump appeals. One is the hush money case. Another one is a case against Letitia James. So he went forward and did his MAGA land acknowledgement, hired one of the attorneys that Donald Trump really likes. And that attorney now is meeting with the Department of Justice and saying, hey, you don't really have a good case. You're probably going to lose. And also, this guy Adani, he's worth billions of dollars. And he pinky promised, he swore he was going to come over to the United States because he supports Donald Trump. And in 2024, he said he would come here and invest billions of dollars and hire lots of Americans. So do you really want to criminally prosecute him? And it looks like the Department of Justice says, no, that's good for our economy. So I think we're just going to drop all criminal charges. And it hasn't been finalized, but we do know that not the DOJ, that the Securities Exchange Commission, the SEC, they're the stock guys. They can go after you civilly, not really criminally. They are dropping their charges, or they came to some settlement where he has to pay out a few $1 million, but they're going to allow him to still operate his business interests in the United States. So it seems like the suspicious people are off the hook, and other people who are engaging in suspicious activity, like tantamount to insider trading or violating the Hatch Act, they're kind of in the clear just because they happen to be on the good team. And I say the good team, and I go back and forth with the R's and the D's. I hate them all. Before I get to my last story, I think it's just worth saying, when the FBI deployed the investigation team that did the Trump memo on my behalf, this is what happened. They sat down my colleagues and asked them questions, very specific questions that were in a memorandum that said, hey, is Steve vaccinated? What is his position on January 6th? Hey, does Steve like Donald Trump? One of the few friends that I have back at the FBI office that I worked at, he told me about it. And he's a pretty squared away guy. He's really funny and deadpan answer these guys, because this is the typical American Radicals podcast sort of audience response that I would expect if any one of you was being questioned by the FBI. He said, yeah, Steve hates Democrats. And then the investigators were, oh, yeah, they're looking down, they're writing their notes. He goes, yeah, and Steve hates Republicans. And then they looked up, just very disappointed. He goes, yeah. Steve doesn't like anybody who's in politics at all. So he pretty much hates them all. It was very disappointing to the weaponized FBI at that point. So that's where you find me on the perspective. But let's be equal opportunity critics. I've been really harsh against the party that's in charge of essentially all of the federal government at this point, the grand old party, be it through corruption or forever wars or weaponization, violating civil rights. All right, now let's return serve. And let's do our final piece of the day, which comes from Fox News. I'm giving it to you, Republicans. I'm giving you your source of choice. I'm giving you your story of choice, which says that Democrats hate the police. Headline: 173 House Democrats vote against resolution honoring police amid rising attacks. So this was a resolution that was proposed. It was passed because 29 Democrats who were in closely held seats, toss-up seats, they sided with the Republicans on this one. They voted for the Republican-authored measure paying tribute to the, quote, extraordinary sacrifice law enforcement officers make and criticizing the defund the police movement for jeopardizing public safety. One of the big mucky mucks for this bill, he's from Iowa. His name is Zach Nunn. His quotation is, quote, "We want to take the best practice of respecting law enforcement in Iowa to the nation's capital, and I was thrilled that we got bipartisan support. I think it unfortunately puts a real spotlight on a chasm we have between those who support law and order and those who are supporting those who undermine it," unquote. Some Democrats likely objected to the following, though. It criticized left-wing activists for supporting defund the police movement and sanctuary city policies for putting officers' safety at risk. So what really went down here? The Republicans said, we're getting our butts kicked in the polls, so you know what we should do? We should push forward a resolution and put all of these representatives on the record. It's not going to do anything. It's a resolution. It's not a law. It's not going to go to the president's desk. It's just them making a statement that we back the blue no matter what. If you back the blue no matter what, you're retarded. How many violations of civil rights do we itemize on the American Radicals podcast? To back the blue blindly, coming from the alleged small government party? Why would the only part of government that you trust without a doubt 100% of the time be the guys with the guns? Again, retarded. But really, what was the resolution? The resolution was an effort by the Republicans to try to just get a news cycle, get some red meat over on Fox News, to get the people that are consuming that content say, oh, I hate those Democrats. I can't wait to go vote this November, because they got them to say that the left doesn't dislike the left. That's basically what the resolution was. Now, am I in favor of defund the police movement? No. Am I in favor of sanctuary city policies? No. But you know what I'm not in favor of either? Exploiting police officers for political points, which is exactly what this is. This is no different than the, who was the young lady? Oh man, now her name escapes me. The woman who was murdered down in Laken Riley. Gosh, say her name, Laken Riley. She was the woman who was in Georgia, who was the nursing student, who was on a run, and an illegal alien caved in her skull. And then the Republicans went to the State Union saying, say her name, Joe Biden. And they wore all these buttons. And the family of Laken Riley refused to come as the guests of the Republicans. And I said, thank God for them. They refused to let their daughter be exploited, the memory of her daughter. If I were in Congress, I would have been amongst the 173 House Democrats who voted against this resolution. Not because I'm in favor of Black Lives Matter that wants to defund the police. Not because I want sanctuary policies that allows illegal aliens, who I've called for to be marched down the southern border like they're in the Trail of Tears, but because I'm against the government from exploiting people for political purposes, which is exactly what this is. And again, if that offends your sensibilities, I don't care, because I'm a man. I'm 40.
Come after me. I'm a man. I'm 40.
All of my positions have already been fired. There's no secret about where I stand on any of this stuff. I'm against government basically all of the time. And I'm really against corruption 100% of the time. And I don't care who it comes from. I'm going to say it. I've drawn the line in the sand. The round is already fired. If you deliver those certain set of circumstances, if that situation were to arise, I'm going to just be the messenger. I'm the delivery boy of the message that that's wrong, and the American people shouldn't stand for it at all. All right. So that's the end of the day for the American Radicals podcast, guys. But I have a fun palate cleanse. We talked about some really dark stuff today, but I want to kind of send us off on a nice note. It actually does come from my stomping grounds in Florida, not my county, but relatively a couple hours away. I'm not hyping up Florida too much. It's just kind of a demonstration of young men doing the right thing and then them getting some attaboys for what they did, which was saving an older man from a heart attack.
Sir, you okay? All the rescue's here to check you out, okay?
We came to the McDonald's, and while we were eating, We look out the window and we see him trying to change his tires. So we go over, offer him help, and we change the tire. And then about halfway through it, he tells Logan that he's not feeling all right and he needs an ambulance. And that's when Logan had the idea to call the ambulance for him.
It looked like he was very tired, very pale. He wasn't speaking that much, so he was just like kind of exhausted is what it looked like at first to us.
He was like hunched over in the passenger seat, like trying to catch his breath.
Most kids nowadays will just drive by, video and such, but they don't really know the real cause of like what's going on.
Helping people doesn't cost anything. It's just feels good after, you know?
Without a doubt, these young men made an impactful difference in the outcome for this particular gentleman and probably did save his life.
Pretty cool. Good on them. They deserve all the accolades and helmet stickers. And that's not exploiting them. That's elevating them, giving them the credit they deserve. All right, guys. So that's going to do it for us today on the AmRad pod. Oh, and I forgot. Oh my gosh, I forgot. Administrative note. You can catch me tomorrow, Tuesday night. I will be on Timcast, IRL, Tim Pool Show, 8 o'clock Eastern time. I don't know how much it's going to wind up disrupting the AmRad pod, but I will relay that to you the best that I can. We might have to do some like short episodes. I might have to miss one. I don't know at this point. It's kind of all up in flux, booking out the travel. So if you have to miss us on Tuesday or Wednesday, because the reason is, check us out. Timcast IRL, Tuesday evening, 8 o'clock Eastern time. And until then, whatever that is, have a good day.
You've been listening to the American Radicals podcast. Find us on YouTube, Rumble, and X at AmRadPod.